Okay, let's talk about the activity you did the other day or today you finished it. First, you said you could and should use your study guide. Aside the vocabulary for this lesson, we have studied the regular present, yo escojo, tú quieres, the present progressive, estoy cantando, estás leyendo en ser and estar. I said translators are strictly forbidden, and not everybody follow this rule. When I say you can look up a word, that means dog, pizza, to eat. You cannot look for conjugated verb. Conjugated verbs means you can look for to eat, but not for I eat or I ate. Okay? And most of the activities you will see for your answers, I put um, how your verb should have been conjugated if your question was about you. Why do you eat potatoes? Or if your question was about he, she, Pepe, el niño, why Pepe eats potatoes? The first activity I ask you to use por qué, why, and then the verb. And I gave you two examples, and in both examples, the verb are in irregular present, okay, because they are all irregular verbs. Most of them. Te diviertes, se divierte. I don't know why some of you use the past tense. I don't know where you got it from because you don't remember it. You studied very little last year, or even the future, or some kind of wrong way of doing the present progressive, like yo comiendo. But okay, you will have to pause after I explain so you had time to correct. Um, on the left, okay, what your verb needed to look like is the question you asked was about you. Why do you fall in love, break up? On the right, the question was about he or she. Why Pepe is married or he feels. Okay, before you correct, verbos como enamorarse, sentirse. Okay, the verb is enamorar or sentir. The se is the reflexive that you studied last year with Pedro. That means you conjugate the verb like normal, like enamorar, enamoro, enamoras, enamora, but you had to put a reflexive pronoun according to the subject. So, ¿por qué tú te enamoras? Él o ella se enamora. Nosotros nos enamoramos. So you conjugate the verb normally, you had to put the reflexive pronoun before. Another very common mistake was with estar casado. That's to be married. If you put an N, cansado, that means to be tired. Okay? So now post this, make sure you correct. Okay? Oh, I forgot. Pasarlo bien is not reflexive. It has a lo at the end that you will have to put before you conjugate the verb. It never changes. ¿Por qué tú lo pasas bien? Ella lo pasa. Nosotros lo pasamos. Okay? Activity 2 was basically the same. Again, I gave you two examples in present. Okay? So here you have had to conjugate the verbs if you made the question about you. Do you know? Do you wear? Or about he or she or whatever. Okay? All these verbs are irregular. Remember the reflexive, ponerse. The verb is poner. So pongo, pones, pone, pone. And then you have to put the reflexive pronoun according to the subject. Yo me pongo. Tú te pones. Ella se pone. Okay? The same with llevarse bien. The verb is llevar. The se indicates you had to put a reflexive pronoun before you conjugate the verb. Tú te llevas bien. Ella se lleva bien. Okay? And now you pause. Make sure you all correct. You don't have to change your questions. You have to correct your verbs. Here was a little bit more complicated. You had to use most of, not for ser and estar, but for the others, a combination of two verbs. Remember that in Spanish, when you had two verbs together with the same subject meaning to say I eat and you eat, that's not the same subject. Okay, that's I and you. But like you do in English, you say, do you want to eat? You don't say, do you want you eat? Okay? The second verb is never conjugated, it stays in infinitive. So, querer, do you want, and then the things in blue are the samples. Okay? As long as you conjugate the querer, the second verb has to be in infinitive. Do you want to eat potatoes? ¿Tú quieres comer patatas? To have to. Tú tienes que hablar con Pedro. Second verb not conjugated. Tú puedes dar dinero a mi amigo. Can you give money to my friend? Very important, the future. Are you going to or will you? Ir plus a plus infinitive. Tú vas a comer, meaning, are you going to eat or will you eat? Number 5 is the famous present progressive. You cannot do a present progressive if you don't use estar. You cannot say tú hablando. That means you talking, you eating. No, are you eating? Are you talking? Okay? So as long as you put the estás, and then if you use an AR verb, it has to end in ando. Estás hablando con Pepe. It was ER or IR. Estás comiendo patatas. And then ser y estar. Eres, you can add so many things, but you can always use the acronym for ser, that is doctor. Okay? Discretion, origin, um, characteristic, time, occupation, and relation in the sense like he is my brother. This is my book. Okay, so tú eres alto, característica. Tú eres de China, origin. Tú eres profesor, occupation. Okay. Estar, the best is to use it with how you feel or where you are. Tú estás triste. Tú estás en la escuela. And here again on the right is you made the question about he or she. Okay. Does Pepe wants to eat potatoes? Okay, so now pause, correct your verbs, and then move on to the last slide. The last slide, the important thing was you should have used the present. Okay, but numbers 1, 2, and 5, celoso, mentiroso, tímido. Oh, and I forgot orgulloso, pero it can be both. Those are characteristics of personality traits in general. So you could have used them with eres if you were asking about you. Okay? Tú eres una persona tímida. Okay, are you a shy person? 6, 7, and 8, ansioso, solo, alone, and tranquilo, are feelings or states. So you could have used it with the estás, but you didn't need to. Like tú estás tranquilo en los exámenes. For the rest, you could do whatever. I would have rather you had used the present tense, but if you use the present progressive, it means the same. For us to say la pareja discute en el parque and la pareja está discutiendo, it means the same. Right now they are arguing. So I tend to think it's easier to use the simple present because here sometimes you forget the está, you forget the yendo, ando. Okay?